Thank you so much. And what a wonderful segue into talking about our program for today. So I am very pleased to be hosting coordinators for the McKnight Fellowships, who will share with us much more and answer for us what that is. But please join me in welcoming Melanie Pankau and Dana Kassel to the podium.
Thank you, Lacey. And hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. My name is Dana Kassel, and I am the program director for the McKnight Fellowships for Dance and Choreography, based in the Twin Cities. And I've been in that role since 2007, with the program since 2007. And we are just so happy to be here in Ely with the Tuesday group to share more about these opportunities, which are statewide. So that's why we're here to talk to you today. And I want to give a special thanks to both Lacey and Liz and to the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council for helping us spread the word about this opportunity and this event today. And introduce my colleague.
Hi, I'm Melanie Pankau, and I'm the fellowship coordinator for the McKnight Visual Artist Fellowship programs. I've been in this position for about 8 years, and I'm also a visual artist. Thank you for joining us.
So I'm going to start by just giving some general information about the program, and then both Melanie and I will speak a little bit to our specific programs. But I'd love to start by just asking how many people in the room here practice some kind of art making, craft making on their own? Amazing. That's amazing. That doesn't surprise me at all. In part because we have a rich community around the state. And in the last year and a half, I've been making a lot of trips around Greater Minnesota to talk about this program, and I find a huge turnout everywhere we go. So we're very lucky to have all that arts and culture. So I'm going to start by just talking about some basic information about the entire fellowship program. And it's important to start by saying that the fellowship program started in 1982. Originally, it began with 8 discipline areas. So choreography was one of the original 8 disciplines that were supported. And over that 42 years, this fellowship program has been awarding individual artist fellowships in a variety of mediums. And you can imagine the impact that 42 years of support has offered both individuals and our communities. So what we realize is that not everybody around the state knows about this opportunity or doesn't realize it's available to people throughout the state. So our aim today is to give you the start of information and the way to find out more. So this will be brief and kind of succinct, but we hope that you'll follow up with us or our colleagues to learn more. So as I said, there was originally 8 disciplines, and now there are 15 disciplines that are supported by the program. The McKnight Foundation over time has done kind of an assessment of the field and added or combined different programs, but this is where we land now. You will see 15 disciplines listed on the left, and on the right, you will see the nonprofit organization that houses that fellowship program. So it's important to note that although all of the program is supported by the McKnight Foundation, none of us work at the foundation. We receive all of our funds through them, but we're all housed in a nonprofit organization that supports that medium. And the wonderful thing about that is that it makes us all much more receptive, and it makes our programs more malleable and responsive to those particular mediums. So you'll find that in other fields, in other programs and funding, that it's quite different. It's usually housed at the funder itself. So I'll just point out that there's one, this is a little bit older list. So choreographers and dancers are 2 different programs that we coordinate. And we were up until last March funded to be housed at the Cole Center, but that unfortunately has closed. So currently we are housed at Art Space, which is the parent organization for that. But the rest of them there are all accurate. And I'm going to start by saying there's a table in the back that has both this list in more detail and the contact information for each of these organizations. That can be found on the table back there, as well as some information about both of our programs more specifically. So we hope you'll take those away with you today, if that's helpful. I also think it's important to mention that the McKnight Foundation itself was started by William L. and Maud McKnight. And William started at 3M as a bookkeeper and worked his way up to be one of the directors. So some of the funds came from the 3M organization, his income from that, but the rest of it was family money. So it sometimes is associated with 3M, but that's not actually where all the funds came from. And now at this time, the foundation is a public entity. So it is, there is still a family member on the board, but it is really a publicly held entity at this point. And it's interesting, people have been asking me that question a lot more lately. So I think it's good to be transparent about that. Let's see. So just in the last couple of years, I wanted to mention those changes to the program. The ones that are asterisk on the left were added in the last years. Again, the foundation did kind of an assessment of the field and saw that there was a need to add some specific disciplines, in part because there were now organizations that could really house that and serve those communities well. So the more recent ones are fiber artists, printmakers, and book artists. And you'll see the organization on the right that they're coordinating with. And then the last two that came online were community engaged practice and culture bearers fellowship program. And but now they've all had a couple rounds, so they're all, they've all been in operation for a couple of years now. So it is also important to note that although this was started in 1982, in 2002, a significant change happened across all of the fellowship programs. At that point, up until that point, the fellowships were different amounts in different disciplines. And there was just a lot of variety in the way that those different programs were funded. And the foundation, again, kind of did an assessment of the field and decided that at that point, all fellowships in all disciplines would be raised to $25,000. And they would be the same across all disciplines. So that was really significant change in the way that the program is run and facilitated and funded. And in some ways, we think about a whole different program in some ways starting at that time. So as I said, each program is housed at a nonprofit organization. And so it's really important, if you're interested in more information, to reach out to people like Melanie and myself who run fellowships at those sites, but we're happy to help you figure that out if you have one of those sites that you want to contact. The other thing that we want to talk a little bit is to talk about the criteria and the intention for these fellowships. So the intention is to recognize and support mid-career artists or beyond who are living and working in Minnesota and who have a sustained level of accomplishment and commitment to artistic excellence. So that's kind of a lot of words, but it's getting at the fact that the foundation is really interested in supporting and providing financial means for people who have been at it for a while to continue on into their career. And they understand that artists who have been at it for a while and who are contributing over time to their communities and culture have a huge impact on the state as a whole. So their goal is to just continue to support that. It also is important to note that this is not an award for early promise or somebody who's in early practice. We do have other funding support in our state for those types of artists and culture bearers, but the foundation was really interested in infusing some support into people who had been at it for a while. Let's see. And so, yes, again, I'm just going to say it's for artists who have been creating work over a period of time and their work to date. It is not a project grant, meaning it's not to help you fund something you want to do in the future. It is for what you have accomplished up till this time. Another intention is to support artists who are part of and contributing to the creative, cultural, and community fabric of Minnesota. But this does not exclude people who, for example, tour as a part of their work, or travel as a part of their work, or have lived in other places in earlier parts of their career and now reside in Minnesota. So it's just important to note that the foundation wants to offer funds to people who are really contributing here. Let's see. Your application materials in any of the programs will speak to what I've just explained as the intention. So in our different disciplines, the application's a little different, which is what Melanie and I will elaborate on. But you want to speak to the fact that you're an artist who's living in Minnesota and contributing here, that you have a body of work you've created over time at a high level of artistic excellence. That's what you're aiming to illustrate and exemplify with your application. Let's see. So I'm going to speak a little bit about our program. Yeah, thank you. My clicker. The Artist Fellowships for Dancers and Choreographers is housed in this beautiful building on the corner of 6th and Hennepin, downtown Minneapolis. Used to be a Masonic temple way back, but it's been a lively art center for since the 70s, actually. We're on the 3rd floor, right on the corner there. And so we're based in the Twin Cities, but as I said, it's really important for us to continue to spread the word about this opportunity for people around the state. For our program, we have a website that's up at the top that's also on the materials in the back. That's how you can find out more. Our full application opens in early January with a deadline in late March. So we give you a couple months. But we do have an intent to apply step in the fall. So if you have any intention or ideas about applying, what we do is ask you to fill out a really simple form on our application site. And also that allows you to add any events you're going to have during the year to a calendar. So we have 2 different panels, one for dance and one for choreography each year. And we have at least 1, if not 2 panelists who are Minnesota based exclusively. And their role for the bulk of the year is to try to go see as many live performances as they can. That's really unusual. There's only one other program, the Theater Artist, that does that has people, and it's because it's a live art form. So getting people in the space is super important. So they do their best, but you can imagine trying to cover the whole state is a challenge. So they do their best. So that's the reason for the intent to apply, but that doesn't say to us that you have to apply. And if you don't fill out the intent to apply, you can still apply in the winter. Doesn't exclude anything. Our full application opens in the winter, and that will include, again, a contact form, a proof of Minnesota residency, and then 3 main components, which I think is my next slide. Oh, no, it's not. So it's an artist statement, which is very open. In our case, you don't have to answer any specific questions. You're just going to talk about your artistry. A resume of 2 pages to help us understand your body of work, and then a video work sample. And this is one place that our program, every once in a while, there's different requirements for our applications. In this case, there's a 15-minute runtime for your work sample for dancers and a 20-minute work sample for choreographers. And yeah, so you're using those examples to show us your body of work over time. And the panel will view all of the work sample and read all of your materials. And then we have a panel meeting where the decisions are made. One really important job that I have, because I am not on the panel, I do not take part in the decision making. A really big part of my job is to help people navigate our application, which is partly why I'm here. But it's also, especially for people who are new to our program or new to our application, a really important first step is to have a conversation with me about your materials, about your history as an artist, and how you might best apply. So we have a couple different ways to find out more. The first is that we have info sessions twice a year, and we'll have 2 info sessions coming up in August for the intent to apply step. We also have resume statement, artist statement, and work sample examples on our website from past awardees. you can see their materials and see what they wrote about, see how they formatted their resume, and use that information to inform your own application. And then I also offer one-on-one meetings during our open application period in the winter, where I will meet with artists, look at your materials, talk to you about how you speak about your work, how you format your resume, things like that, before the application deadline. So we offer a lot of assistance and are really eager to chat with you if you have any inkling to apply for our program. I think that's all I'm going to offer, and I think I'm going to hand it over to Melanie. And I should have said at the beginning, we will take questions at the end, so we're both going to talk, and then we'll take questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dana. I'm going to speak a little bit to Visual Artist Fellowship. I mentioned that I've been working for about 8 years. These are some sample images from this year's fellows. So similar to Dana, our application opens in late January with a deadline in mid-March. It's an online application only through Submittable. And the application materials consist of a contact information form through Minnesota residency, and then 10 work samples. So you can submit work samples in any combination of image, audio, video, or PDF formats. So one work sample is equivalent to 1 minute of video, one still image, 1 page of a PDF, or 1 minute of audio. So you can submit a single 10-minute video, or 10 images, or 10 PDF pages, or you can do a combination. So for example, you could submit 10 minutes of a video, 5 pages from an artist's book, or 3 still images, and then that would equal 10 work samples. So for our discipline, we try to make the work sample selection as flexible as possible to accommodate the wide range of artistic practices that we receive. So anywhere from a single medium practice, such as painting and photography, to artists that are working across different mediums like video and installation. Along with the work samples, also you have to submit an artist statement. This is a 1-page statement, about 500 words, that should directly speak to the images that you are submitting. And it can also provide information about your background, development, or current direction of your work, or any other information you would present to the panel. And then additionally, a resume that shows at least 8 years of commitment to your artistic practice in the field of visual art in a simple list format. Some other things I can share with you. We have 3 panelists that review the applicants through multiple rounds of jury to select 6 fellows a year. Typically, we receive about 125 to 150 applicants per cycle. The panel usually consists of 1 curator, 1 artist or maker, and 1 arts writer or art historian from different geographical locations outside of Minnesota. Finalist visits are 20 minutes, studio visits with the panel. And if you are a Greater Minnesota finalist or fellow, McKnight does cover your mileage and hotel costs so that artists are not financially burdened out. And then fellowships carry additional benefits and are specific to each discipline. So for the visual artists fellowships, our fellowships last 2 years, and along with the $25,000, we also offer 5 curator visits, a professional development stipend, a residency through the Artist Community Alliance, professional photographic documentation of your artwork, 8 hours of consultation time at Springboard for the Arts, and then access to MCAT facilities and library. And then, like Dana said, we also offer additional resources. So we do have 2 information sessions that are pre-recorded on the application site. One is an application overview with the fellowship director, Keisha Williams. And then I do 1 work samples, statements, and application strategies where I interview a current fellow and they discuss how they approach their application and what the finalist studio visit was like. So it's a more personal approach to the application process. Along with the information sessions, we do offer one-on-one meetings via phone or Zoom with myself or Keisha so applicants can receive feedback on their applications before they submit them. So we can help with work sample selection and sequencing, editing, crafting, and tailoring an artist statement to match your work samples or help organize it. That's all I have. Yeah.
Thanks, Melanie. Melanie reminded me that I failed to mention one really important thing in the beginning, which is that the $25,000 that a fellow receives is unrestricted funds. That means they can do whatever they want with that money and they do not need to explain it to us. And that's very unusual. So that's the part of what's so different between this fellowship program and like a project grant that you might get from the Arrowhead Regional Arts Council or something like that, where you're going to explain to them your project and you're going to provide a budget and that kind of thing. This is more about awarding the artists for what they've done over time to this moment. And then they can use those funds in any way that they see fit to move themselves forward. I'll just say that's very unusual in the whole state of arts funding. And it's wonderful because we feel that a mid-career artist, somebody who's been at it for a while, we don't need to babysit them and their funds. They know exactly what they should do with that money to move themselves forward. And it can be something as simple as like paying off their debt or buying themselves a car or starting a retirement fund, or something that you would never be able to get project funds to do. Sometimes people do use it to create a show or produce work or something like that, but it's really unrestricted. So we don't ask for an accounting of any of that at the end. So I forgot to say that, and it's very important. And then the other thing I did want to explain, just like Melanie explained for the visual artists, dancers and choreographers also receive other opportunities beyond the $25,000. So we also have an Alliance Artist Communities Alliance residency that's available to them. We do a photo shoot as well. We bring them up to Toffee Lake Center, which is why I'm here in part. For the last 14 years, our program has brought dancer and choreography fellows up to Liz's beautiful space on Toffee Lake. And I think this is maybe my 8th or 9th year, something like that, coming up. So I've gotten to know your community a little bit over time, and am always impressed with how many active artists and artisans there are up here. But also, we love bringing our fellows up to just have some time in your beautiful nature and decompress. And we don't require them to make anything when they're up here. It's just about hanging out in a hammock and reading a book or talking to the loons or whatever you want to do. So that's one of our opportunities. And then we do have separate professional development opportunities for the dancers and the choreographers that are very much honed to their disciplines. And in that way, I want to mention that every other year we produce a show called Solo, which is the dancers are offered the opportunity for us to commission a solo work to be made expressly for them over the course of the 2 years after their award. And we produce those on a show every other year. So next September 20th and 21st at O'Shaughnessy, the O'Shaughnessy Auditorium, which is on St. Catherine's campus in St. Paul, we will produce 6 world premiere solos by the 22 and 23 dancer fellows. So that's very unique. And we love putting them all up on stage together. It's always a very eclectic bunch because our dancers are eclectic. And so if anybody is going to be traveling to the cities in September or wants to know more about that, you can check our website. That's our next kind of public facing production. So I think what we would love to do now is answer questions. And Lacey has the microphone, but also maybe some people online will ask questions, and we're happy to answer them.
I will be selfish and claim the first question for myself. So by virtue of the fact that you do this work and just the function of the funds, it's evident that the foundation is a value of art. Can you speak, both of you personally, to why you think art is valuable and the artistic pursuits and endeavors are valuable, you know, what's at the heart of why this foundation and why these fellowships exist. I mean, in beyond giving artists funds, but just why is art important?
Yeah, I think the foundation, I've heard them talk about how this program started. So when the foundation was first started, one of the first areas that they created was their arts and culture team. And in part that happened because there was a working artist in the family. So they had a personal connection and they understood the impact on an individual artist in a way that I think perhaps others don't. So I do know that was its original origins. And I think the foundation, I can't speak for the foundation per se, but I've heard them talk about the fact that they understand that the impact of all of their arts and culture funding on the state, on all the people who live here, is part of their main intention with all of their funds. And they've now seen over time the ecosystem, the artistic ecosystem, grow and flourish because of that. And so they really understand that. And we share with them what our fellows talk about in terms of like the impact the funds have for them, what they produce from it, what they, how it furthers their career. And so we get to speak with our colleagues at the foundation a lot about how these funds have had impact. Yeah, and what I don't have down, because I'm not on the foundation staff itself, is they do fund several other areas that are super important. They do work with poverty and community building and environmental concerns. So they have their hands in a lot of different areas, but the arts and culture team has always been primary to their funds and to their aims. So, I mean, you guys can think about what impact the artists in your community have. And our hope being here today is to let you know that these funds are available to anybody around the state. So we would love to just have it be known and have you share with those you know in your community that these funds are available. I just think it enriches everybody's life if you have ability. I also, when I talk to people from other states, they are wowed by this program. It's very unique that Minnesota has these funds available for individual artists. It's also, it speaks to the fact that Minnesota values artists and culture bearers in a unique way. And I always say to them, I think it's in part because it's so cold here for part of the year that we had to find ways to keep ourselves entertained inside. You know, like we understand outside and the environment, and that's super important, but also there's a period of time where you don't get to do that very much. So I think we are kind of unique as a state in that way, that we know cultivating things for yourself and for your community through arts and culture is just as important as everything else. And that's my personal theory, but do you have any thoughts about that?
The only other thing I would add is we've been to many McKnight partner meetings before, and I think one saying that always comes up is Minnesota thrives when its artists thrive. And I think that just kind of seals it for me, because I think there's so much truth in that simple statement, and that it just, the arts just enrich our lives. They make it worth living, and it connects people. No matter what the discipline, it connects us on a deeper level. So
thank you. I've got 3 questions in this corner. Nice.
I'm Pam Davis, and I'm an artist, and also I own the Art and Soul Gallery and Gift House in East Minnesota. Heard of that? One is I want to make sure, if you haven't heard about it, which I'm sure you have, but make sure you stop at our gallery on Sheridan Street. I was fortunate 15-20 years ago to get one of your fellowships. It was much different back then, and I was thrilled and just amazed at how great this state supported their artists. Now to see this one, because of some of my biggest problems in applying for grants for artists, is that one, it's project oriented, and it's always for emerging artists. And another problem was I couldn't go get training outside of Minnesota. So I am thrilled. I just can't believe we are fortunate enough in this state to get this kind of support. So thank you to all of you and all of you artists too, for all that you contribute.
Thank you, Pam. I'm gonna go to Sharon and then I'll be back up. Oh. Okay.
I was really interested in the culture bearers part and especially the indigenous artists. And could you tell about how that has expanded or developed and if there are other groups, Latinos or Black people that are benefiting from that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I know some things about the Culture Bearer program. It was the most recent one added. And in some ways, I feel like it's what you might hear in other programs as traditional arts or might be labeled something else. But it was very important to them when they started the program that it be called Culture Bearers as opposed to traditional arts. I think that's a clear distinction on the role of people who are passing down culture or and so part of their definition for culture bearers is that it's an artist who's learned from past generations or past mentors and is also passing it on to the next generation or future artists. That is a part of their definition. And that's very unique. Not all artists do that. So that is part of their definition is that it's a continuation of that. And it can be applied for in any discipline. So it could be a dancer who's doing that. It could be a visual artist who's doing that, any of the disciplines. And their requirement, interestingly, is that the person has been in that practice for at least 20 years. So that's substantial in terms of commitment, lifetime commitment, really, to their practice. And they've now had maybe 3 or 4 years worth. So if you go to their website, you can see examples of who have been awarded, but people from all the communities you've mentioned have been awarded and others. And within multiple artistic disciplines. So there's been people in theater, there's been people in visual artists. Yeah, it's been really wide reaching already. I do feel like because it's relatively new in terms of this full program, they're catching up. That's the way I feel about it. Like there's been a lot of people out there who have been deserving for a long time. And because this is a newer program, they're just trying to get as many people awarded as possible. But it's really thrilling to be able to add that. And I'll also mention that the community engaged practice, which is newer, which is kind of, it's also a program that I feel like maybe people didn't feel was as appropriate for an artistic fellowship. People who are engaging their community in making or learning or creating art that involves the community in some way. It's just a different kind of a practice, you know? And so that's why that separate program was created, because they felt like it's kind of apples and oranges a little bit sometimes with the panel when they're looking at all these different kinds of art making. And there was certainly enough people doing community engaged practice to warrant its own fellowship program. Yeah. Yeah. So I would encourage you to go to our site or to the Culture Bearers Fellowship site and check out who's been awarded, because it's really a wonderful, wonderful list.
And we did put a link in the Tuesday group email that promoted this program. There is a link to that website.
Great.
First, thank you for coming. I have a question. My parents have done visual and writing art for over 50 years in their residence here in Greater Minnesota. Can you speak to the eligibility for Greater Minnesota resident artists? Because in reviewing your application or your awards, most of them are from metropolitan areas. And also to the eligibility requirement of receiving other awards, grants, and fellowships, because individuals in Greater Minnesota seem to have a lower availability of those items. And how does that work on your qualifications?
Mm-hmm.
You want to speak to that first? For the visual artists, there's no difference between Metro, for the application materials, there's no difference between Metro-based artists and Greater Minnesota, everything's the same. With the 8 years of experience, that's just like our baseline of somebody who's been at it for a while, and so you're just showing like a demonstrated commitment to your practice, so that can take so many different forms depending on the artist's practice. So we take that into account when we're reviewing resumes. So some artists might show their work publicly in, galleries and museums. Some might be showing it in their community centers. It just, every practice is so different. And so we realize that as admin program directors, that's the case.
Yeah, I'd also say that can't remember what your artistic statement asks for, but ours is wide open. And if people have practices that maybe don't seem to fit as obviously into this pool, I encourage them to speak to that in their artistic statement. Speak about why you make your work, where you make it, if that makes sense. And especially now that I've been talking to people around Greater Minnesota who they've chosen to live and work in a specific place for a specific reason, help the panel understand how your community and your environment impacts your art making. Like this mosquito that's bothering me might impact how I sing. So I just think we value artists around the state, but we do recognize that sometimes it's a bit of a hurdle for people to understand themselves as part of this eligible pool. And our job is to just chat with you to start and help you figure out how you're going to put your best foot forward in terms of this application. But it's all eligible.
Yeah, still have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Just a little bit about the geographic nature of the fellowship awards. So are you geographically blind? So, I mean, if you're a Minnesota resident, it doesn't matter whether you're from Ely, Morris, Winona, Twin Cities.
Yep.
Is that what you're aiming for?
Yes. Yeah, and I will say there's, in our program, we've had 2 fellows from Greater Minnesota, but dance and choreography does tend to be concentrated in the Twin Cities area, in part because choreographers and dancers need other choreographers and dancers. So it's about proximity to other artists, but we know they're around the state, so that's why I'm here. However, there are other programs. For example, my colleague at the Ceramic Arts Fellowship Program or the Fiber Arts Fellowship have many, many more fellows around the state. It's just a more common practice in every corner of the state. So yeah, to answer your question briefly, all are eligible in the same way. It's just about helping you figure out how to put your application forward for this. Yeah.
In follow-up of the past 2 questions, in visiting your website, I've seen, there's lots of these, what you seem to call as opportunities for the fellows. My interpretation when first visiting that was okay, these are things that you have to come and do. Am I correct in presuming these are opportunities, not requirements?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that because it is a fellowship for a body of work from back then up until now, that there is the monetary fellowship plus the opportunities are perks that come with being awarded this fellowship. Am I correct in
That's exactly right.
that? Thank you.
That's exactly right. And so the only thing we require our fellows to do besides accept a check is to come to a photo shoot. That's our only required activity because we use those photos for publicity and for our website and everything. Everything else is absolutely optional. And our solo opportunity is quite specific to having this work created and performing it. But our choreography fellowship opportunity, which I didn't speak to, is funds that can be used in a whole variety of ways to support your current projects, which would be applicable wherever you are. So we try to make our other opportunities as malleable and accessible as possible. And I think that's true for all the programs. Yeah.
Roberta.
Hi, I'm just curious, how many are awards or fellowships are awarded in each category?
Yeah.
Is it one per year, or if you're trying to play catch up? Are some offered more
Yeah.
fellowships in a year?
Yeah, thank you for
Another-
asking that question. Because I realized I didn't speak to our program. So the number of fellowships in each program are slightly different. And on that page in the back, it does list that as one of the columns. For dancers, we hand out 3 fellowships each year, and for choreography, 3 fellowships each year. You have 6?
We get 6.
They have 6 in a year, but they have a much bigger applicant pool. So it does vary from program to program. No, when I said catch up, I felt, they give out, I think it's 2 or 3 a year.
I wanna say 3.
Yeah, the Culture Bears fellowships, 3 a year. It's just, they knew that there were gonna be people applying who had been at it for much longer than 20 years. So they knew they would be absorbing kind of this rush of applicants, because of that. The creation of that new program. That's what I was insinuating with that. But, I think total over the course of the year with the 15 programs, there's now 44 fellows each year in all the disciplines. So 44 is the current number. So you'd have to look at the sheet to see which program has how many, but.
Wonderful. Well, I will say quick before we thank these ladies, next week we're hearing from an expert on solar panels. And you'll have to forgive me for not knowing more than that, but his name is Paul Hellstrom, and we'll certainly learn more next week. But for now, it's been really fun to learn about these very amazing opportunities for artists of so many disciplines. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for coming up to Ely to educate us about it. Thank you, Dana and Melanie.
Good to have you. We're gonna hang out for a few minutes. If people have more questions, we're happy to chat.
Yeah, and don't forget the papers to go.